Joe met. Joe worked for me. He did my first Star Trek show in New York, the one before I went to the 1983 show. And he sold some of my Trek stuff at the show. He had a dealer table. Okay? So, at any rate, he worked for me at DiMartino's. He was 16, and then he went to 17. He got a car. And I didn't hear from him for a while because he was going to sell on his own. He had enough Star Trek stuff that he was going to start selling his doubles and blah, blah, blah. Any rate, he calls me up a couple of years later, and he says to me, I'm going to be holding my own Star Trek shows. I think he had just turned 18 or something. Any rate, his parents took a $50,000 mortgage on their home, from what I understood, and with the $50,000, he used half the money to put a deposit on a convention center for a half a year later, and he was going to have 10 Star Trek shows, one in every major city in the United States. And he told me that the first one would be in Las Vegas, and I bought 2 tables at the show. I think they were $400 or $450 each. I don't remember, because Joe was a friend, and he said his guest of honor was William Shatner. And then he told me how William Shatner and he were best of friends. They went everywhere together. They went to plays. They went to movies. They played miniature golf. They went horseback riding, and I couldn't believe it. And he had a girlfriend. I didn't know, if anything funny was going on. But he says to me, "Oh no, my girlfriend and I are very tight." He says, "But Bill is going through a divorce," and I felt sorry for him. He didn't have any friends. And he said to me, so we became friends, and I started.
Well, what year was this?
It was the year before his show. When was his show? Oh, God. His show was in the early 1990s. Because that's where I met Denise Crosby at his show. I think I mentioned that to you previously. I did the show. I had Star Trek cookie jars. When Denise Crosby saw them, we started talking, and when she learned who I was, she said, "Oh, my God, your son, Billy, took a whole bunch of photos of me at a previous Star Trek show." And, and I had just seen her at the show. She signed some autographs for me, but I didn't really know who she was, or I didn't know that much about her, but my son did. He took pictures of her, and she told me, she said, "Your son took pictures of me that were better than the pictures that I had taken by a publicity photographer." And she said, and I paid a lot for those. And she said, and your son has better pictures of me. And I used to teach photography, so I taught my son a little bit about it. And, and he was just very good as an artist. Any rate, Denise put me in her film. I was in her TREKKIES movie, the first one. She made 2 of them. And she filmed me at the Las Vegas show. Oh, God, I think they shot about 12 minutes of film with me. And, when I finally got to see the show, I went into Roosevelt Field movie theater. I think it was an AMC theater. And I went in at 1 o'clock. They had just opened the movie. There were only a half a dozen people in the whole theater because it was 1 o'clock. And I watched Trekkies, and in the middle of the movie, there I was. And I was so tempted to jump up and yell, "That's me," to the 12 people in the theater, but I didn't.
When I saw you in that, I jumped out of my chair. I just screamed, "That's Stan!"
I was sitting in a dentist chair, and my dentist, oh God, she's working on my teeth, for about a month. And I sat down in the chair, and she walks in, and, she says to me, I have to tell you what happened. I couldn't believe it. And I'm looking at her. What happened? I was watching HBO last night. My mother was watching it. And she said, and I walked in, and I started watching it with her because it was a movie about Star Trek collectibles. And she says, and all of a sudden, I jumped up and I said, Ma, that's my patient. She saw me in the movie Trekkies.
So this Star Trek convention was now. Correct me if I'm wrong. This is at an era when Bill Shatner wasn't doing a lot of conventions, and for him to do a convention was a really big deal.
He had never done them before. I think he had done one for Creation, but Joe Kindle grabbed him and said, Joe Kindle went to the Creation show, and that's how he got the idea, because the line for Shatner, they had to cut it off. They had so many people. He only agreed to do 500 signings a day. So he would do 1,000 signings at the Star Trek convention, 500 on Saturday, 500 on Sunday. Creation was paying him $50,000, more than anybody else had ever been paid to sign at a Star Trek show. But Shatner had never gone to a show. He had never signed, and everybody wanted his autograph. And Joe saw that. Joe knew it. So Joe got in touch with him and made him an offer he couldn't refuse. He was going through a divorce. He was depressed. He was having problems. He didn't know what to do. Joe offered him, from what I understand, $500,000 to do 10 shows. That's $50,000 a show, and he was going to do all 10 shows in all the 10 biggest cities in the United States, and all the people who had all the autographs for every Star Trek star except Bill Shatner would come to the show, and he would have a sellout. He knew that.
And what time period was this again?
Early 1990s.
So I know, yeah, it's crazy to think that, because now Bill doesn't stop doing shows.
Well, he stopped for a while,
and he's in the signing machine again. He doesn't quit. So how old was Joe Kindle during this time?
18.
18 years old. So how's he going to come up with $500,000 to give Bill Shatner?
His parents borrowed $50,000. That was enough to pay $25,000 to the convention center. I don't know if he gave anything in advance to Bill Shatner. I don't think he did, but he used the other $25,000 to advertise the show on television. Okay, and once he did that, the advance orders came in like crazy, and then he paid the hotel the rest of the money for the convention center, and then he also could pay Bill Shatner. And all the people who paid at the door couldn't get Shatner's autograph because it was too late. They were sold out. The whole 1,000 autographs were sold.
And
when you get paid in advance,
the city.
Do what?
He kept doing this continuously from city to city.
He never did the whole 10 shows. He had a problem with Paramount.
Interesting.
He was selling, Joe, I was a photographer, and I was selling color photos of all the Star Trek people. And also I was selling color photos of Elvis, the Beatles, and I would have them made up at a company in Bridgeport. And you bring them a picture, they would make a copy, and run off however many copies you wanted. I've never had a problem with any of the pictures I sold at the flea market. Never. Because I printed up like 10 at a time of each one. And I'd sell one at a time here, one at a time there. So what happened is Joe, when he was holding the show, started printing up 1,000. I don't know. And you have to understand, if Shatner is the guest, and if he's going to sign 1,000 autographs, you better print 1,000 photos of him. Or you better print 2 photos of him, 700 each. Or you better print 3 photos of him, 500 each, because you know he's going to he's going to sign 1,000. Well, by the 3rd or 4th show, Paramount closed him down. I understand he was being sued, and I understand his parents had to borrow more money on the house because he had to fight Paramount in court legally. I don't know what kind of arrangement was made, but he stopped, I believe, holding the shows. And, he had to pay Paramount a large amount of money. I don't know how much it was.
Thanks for listening. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and join our Facebook group. Live long, and may the force be with you. Nanu Nanu.